Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I'm your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 148, recording on Thursday, February 19th on a snowy afternoon. The guest for you today is a guy who I work closely with every day during the season inside the TCO Performance Center. His name is Matthew Coller. He has a website called Purple Insider and a podcast that he does every single day, and he's got a lot of opinions. So I want to put him in a position. Just let me know what he thinks specifically on the quarterback situation. And then we talked a little about free agency. So it was a fun one. He has a lot of opinions. I'd be curious in the comments what you guys think of them, specifically on quarterback. Hint, hint, Kyler Murray. And looking forward to you guys hearing the conversation. This show is on YouTube. That's really our primary home. If you're watching on it now, you can hit the subscribe button. You can like, rate, review, all that good stuff. It's also on Spotify, Apple, iHeart, wherever you get podcasts. And we appreciate you listening as we've done this for now more than a year. The show is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by really good people. Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. They can't wait to see what happens the next few weeks with this team. And they are not alone, as you guys, I'm sure, are on the edge of your seat as well. And then the show is sponsored by Unreal, too, which I've got on under here. A little Unreal t-shirt, phenomenal athleisure company based out of St. Paul, and a ton of collabs they do a ton of collabs with different teams, companies, etc. So please check out Unreal. The information is in the description. All right, let's not waste any more time. Here's a conversation with Matthew Coller. All right, Matthew Coller, welcome to the Alec Lewis Show. Thanks for hopping on. How are you? Haven't seen you in a while.
It is a tremendous honor to be on the Alec Lewis Show, presented by Alec Lewis. I have not been up to a whole lot. I mean, they certainly threw a grenade into our offseason a little bit there with firing the general manager. But, aside from that, and having their former quarterback win the Super Bowl and be in the middle of every quarterback rumor over the last few weeks. Aside from all that, just hanging out, just doing my thing. How about you?
Same. Just watching hockey when I can. I mean, you know how it goes. If I can catch the Wild, or now the Wild players playing the Olympics, that's what I'm going to do. Are you excited for Indianapolis? You're going to be at the Combine. I will be there. It is a hoot. I mean, we've done it. You've been there and I've been there the last few years. It's something, isn't it?
A hoot is definitely the way it could be described by some. The most interesting parts usually happen after we've wrapped up the day's work, and then we go about Indianapolis, not in like a Mark Sanchez type of way, but more in a like, hey, let's, just meet up with all the people that we know around the league, friends that we, know from covering other teams, NFL people that we bump into, and you end up with a lot of football conversations that go on, and some stuff is maybe predictive of what's going to happen in the coming weeks, and other stuff turns out to be just sheer rumor, and trying to pick apart what's what is always very interesting. And there's a few stories that we could tell, but probably shouldn't on the, podcasts and things that have happened at high velocity. So yeah, I always look forward to it. One thing I know is that I'm going to come away with some sort of story or something that I'll remember from each individual one that had nothing to do with podiums and sit downs with coaches and GMs and stuff.
It's absolutely right. There is like a, you have to kind of live it to understand type of circumstance with the Combine, and it's wow. But I'm looking forward to it. Be an interesting one this year. I consider you the opinion guy. Like I'll go on your podcast every now and then, and you will put me on the spot to give my opinions in a way that I am very not comfortable with, considering the very, as you know, objective journalist that I am. Considering you that, I thought it would be fun as we're thinking about stuff, as we're getting ready for the Combine, to put you in a position where it is like this. Let's say Mark Wilf calls you up tomorrow and he says, Coller, I'm going to be in Indianapolis. If Mark Wilf was there, great. If he's not, great. And he says, I want to sit down with you and get what you think we should do this offseason on a bunch of these key topics that I am curious about and that I know will matter for my organization. So I'm going to put you in that position here, and I'll be like Mark Wilf. I'll ask you some questions and give some of my thoughts throughout, and that's how we're going to do this. Does that work for you?
I think you are well aware that I'm comfortable in scenarios such as that, so I'm happy to do it. I mean, some of us didn't go to very expensive journalism schools like
Correct.
Missouri, so I guess I just don't quite do it right. But yeah, I'm totally ready for whatever opinions you would like to be shared.
No, on a serious note, it's always good. It helps flesh out kind of. I mean, you always come at it from a it's backed by information, so I appreciate it. We'll start with quarterback. I mean, there's a million ways we could go here. I would wonder, like, what your recommendation would be, what you think you would do, and if it differs from where you'd go from a free agent standpoint in terms of what's more realistic. We'll go there, but just what would your overall kind of thought be on where you personally would take this thing from a quarterback perspective?
I would start with the name Kyler Murray because I think if you're looking around at the situation that you have, you're looking at the roster that you've built over a couple of years, the ages of a lot of the key players, the contract situations of a lot of the key players, and you're looking at any other unproven type of options as, to me, not very viable, because this is not a situation where you're rebuilding or you're rolling the dice or you're trying to just give your young quarterback as much time as possible. This is not the Tennessee Titans with Cam Ward, who are perfectly comfortable if Cam Ward doesn't work out next year, and then they can move on and do something else and draft someone else. This is not that type of situation. You have a number one wide receiver who is very, very frustrated. Even though Justin Jefferson handled things in the classiest way he could, we know that guy is a supreme competitor. We also know that throwing him the football is incredibly successful over the years. Anyone else other than J.J. McCarthy throwing Justin Jefferson the football has had 107 quarterback rating over there. That's Nick Mullins. That's Sam Darnold. That's Kirk Cousins. I mean, that's a pretty big sample of quarterbacks having success throwing him the football. And they need someone who is proven in his time in the NFL to be able to work the ball to the number one wide receiver. And if you look at Kyler Murray and the way that he played with DeAndre Hopkins, that was his breakout season of 2021. I mean, we're talking 100 and whatever number of targets, a lot of success from DeAndre Hopkins. And I think everything starts there, because when Kevin O'Connell gets the job in 2022 and he's sitting there in the lab drawing up little X's and O's and little route combinations, every single one of them is designed to either throw Justin Jefferson the ball or have someone else wide open because everyone is covering Justin Jefferson. And well, I think that it's possible for J.J. McCarthy to someday be a very good NFL starting quarterback. That is still in the cards. We shouldn't wash that out. For 2026, you're talking about a coach who has not had playoff success, who's coming off of a losing season, an ownership that has not tolerated a lack of playoff success during their time owning the team for the last 20 years. I mean, to me, it says you need to find a real proven starting quarterback. And even though Kyler Murray is flawed, I think that the attention to his flaws ignores so much of his strengths as a quarterback. Not just the playmaking, the rushing that he's capable of, but also, I mean, if you look at his 2024 season with a very mid-Arizona team, 3,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 500 yards rushing, and 12th overall by PFF by their grades. I mean, do I have to say it? If the Vikings had that level of quarterback play last year, what did they get, like 12 wins? I mean, so, well, he's not a perfect quarterback. The circumstances you could give him would be very, very good. And I also think that the leadership questions about him are fair, but this team doesn't need leaders. It needs someone who can throw the ball to Justin freaking Jefferson, and Kyler Murray is the top of that list. If you ask me about anyone else, I'm going to have more issues with it, because I think he is such a great fit for this situation. And I just want everyone to recall what they said when the Vikings signed Sam Darnold. Like, what was your first? He sees ghosts, right? Was probably the first thing you said. I mean, this this is a scenario where a good enough quarterback who can run a real NFL offense, throw with anticipation and accuracy, and make a few plays out of structure can be very dangerous with all the things around it. I think we just need to be reminded of that because it was easy to forget last year when a young quarterback was struggling so much to adapt to the NFL.
Yeah, the Kyler one is so interesting to me because he conjures such a perception. Like, not all quarterbacks, some of them, it's just like Mac Jones is kind of maybe more of just like I don't know, you kind of just shrug, you're not, but Kyler, it feels like harbors such a passionate response from a lot of people. And I've said on this podcast, Coller, like, if you really just watch the tape, the talent is pretty undeniable you could talk about the athleticism, but you could also talk about the accuracy, and you could talk about his ability to get the ball up and down. Like, there are plenty of throws on film that you can find from the last few years where he is layering the football toward the sideline to the intermediate level, and it can be pretty intriguing. I mean, there are also, examples on tape of him evading the pocket, keeping his eyes downfield, and making plays. And so the perspective that you've laid out here of, you hand that talent and put it in the hands of somebody who has maximized quarterbacks, older quarterbacks specifically, veteran quarterbacks over the course of 3 years, it's understandable to me. The questions that I would ask you if I was Mark Wilf in this scenario would be, what about his ability to throw the ball over the middle? Because if you look at the data, I mean, and now data, you have different segments of data. It kind of brings you into an intriguing kind of conversation in its own right. But if you look at the data, Kyler Murray has never had a great volume of throwing the football over the middle. The other component of Kyler Murray, from a system standpoint that I would ask you about, would be how much can he operate under center? Believe this past year, when he played with Drew Petzing, it was like an 80% shotgun type of situation, which was much less than what they used when Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback in Arizona. So how would you feel about those components of the fit with Kevin O'Connell and an offense that obviously at its best wants to operate in a very certain way?
Let me start with this. Kyler Murray reminds me of a band that people only heard one hit single by and then never listened to anything else and have a perception of that band. Because I would just like to know how many Arizona Cardinals games from 2024 anybody actually watched in the state of Minnesota. And I don't blame you, because they were an 8-9 football team that was kind of on a rebuild path. And then Kyler's injury threw that all off. They tanked and so forth. But when we're working with that data, you're right that working the ball to the middle of the field is not something he's done with volume, but it is something he's done with success when he's actually thrown those balls. If we look at the PFF grades, intermediate throws over the middle of the field, he can throw with the anticipation and accuracy just like any other starting quarterback in the NFL. And I think when he is locked in, he can do it with very good timing as well, which was really the issue for JJ McCarthy, I think, was that the timing was off, and then Jefferson's coming open and it's, oh no, I have to fit it into a window. Let me throw it as hard as possible. And the harder you throw it, the less consistent it's going to be. And then that all tumbles down into a lot of inaccurate throws. But Kyler is especially in that 10 to 20 range, a really excellent touch thrower that we talk about a lot. And I do think that Petzing in 2024 played a much more Kevin O'Connell style offense than we ever think of Kyler. Because when we think of Kyler, we think Cliff Kingsbury out of the shotgun every play and only throwing to the wide parts of the field and never ever using the middle. But Petzing did have him under center quite a bit more than he had ever been before. And I think with the Vikings and Sam Darnold, it was something closer to 30%. And with Kyler in 2024, it was about a quarter of the time. So not that different. Rolling him out off of play actions and things like that can be very successful. But here's the thing with any quarterback that we're talking about, no matter whether it's him or whether it's sticking with JJ McCarthy or if it's bringing in Mac Jones or whatever, you're not going to find someone who does everything perfectly for the offense
well
that
said.
you've designed, because unless Matthew Stafford demands a trade to the Minnesota Vikings, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the perfect quarterback, the absolute flawless quarterback for this offense, is the NFL's MVP, Matthew Stafford. And you can see it out in Los Angeles. So anyone else, you're going to have to work with strengths and weaknesses, which I think is probably the biggest question about O'Connell and his offense and how much he can adapt it. Because if you bring in Mac Jones, this is the funny thing to me about Kyler, because people do have this reaction to him. That's odd to me, because Mac Jones is a backup quarterback whose average depth of target was like 7 yards or something last year. He wasn't pushing the ball deep down the field for Kyle Shanahan's offense, which actually I think is different from the way that Kevin O'Connell wants to do it, because Kyle Shanahan doesn't have Justin Jefferson. So with even someone like Mac Jones, in your brain, it kind of feels more like, I think there's a connection there of a pocket quarterback and more of a Kirk, which is what Mac Jones could possibly be. So if you're going to do that, well, then you're going to get a lot of throws to TJ Hawkinson. And when Jefferson's there in the middle of the field, maybe you're going to get him the football. But I think what Kyler possesses is a higher ceiling within the offense, to where, yes, you might not be able to do everything you want to do, but I think you could do a high percentage of it. And then the biggest thing with him is, all right, so 3,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, 93 quarterback rating, all that's like, okay, but add 500 yards rushing to the mix. And the other thing that's weird to me too is because both times Kyler played against the Vikings, he gave them a really hard time. The Vikings ended up losing in 2021 to him out in the desert on a missed field goal. And then they needed a game-winning drive from Sam Darnold and some incredible throws to beat Kyler at US Bank Stadium. So I don't think that there's a quarterback that fits better, even if the fit isn't perfect and has the ceiling. So you could argue that Derek Carr is probably the best possible fit for what they want to do. Tremendous arm, especially throwing down the field, very, very accurate, and also doesn't get sacked a whole lot, which they could use. There's a case for that. The difference to me between Kyler and Derek Carr, which I think could both give you like the 12th best quarterback play in the league, is one of them could be in a playoff game where the other team has a dominant defense and run away from them. And I mean, this is a guy who in 2024 beat the Los Angeles Rams 41-10. And had 6 big time throws in that game. Like, the ceiling of top performance from Kyler to me is just higher than what it could be from Derek Carr. And also, he's not 50 years old. And that is a unique situation to be in, because let's say you want to look for your future answer. And this is all in the assumption that they're just not going to run back JJ McCarthy. Let's say you want to look for your future answer in the 2027 draft, but if you perform well and want to keep a lot of the team together in 2027, you could still have a quarterback there, depending on how, all the stuff works out. And there is the issue of, can you trade for him and have Arizona take a lot of the money? I think that is feasible. Or if you're signing him, like, what type of contract are you signing him to? But if I'm Kyler, the Jets want me? No. What about Cleveland? No. What about Miami? Hard pass. I mean, it feels like kind of, I don't want to say a match made in heaven, but a match made out of both sides really needing a certain thing.
I was going to say, in the event that it were to happen, it'd be like a match made out of necessity. But you're right in a couple of respects. The first that I would say is, like, there is no question, if you talk to people in the industry, and you do, that the Vikings opportunity will be the most coveted, just given all the factors at play. When you have Justin Jefferson, when you have Kevin O'Connell who's done what he's done with veteran quarterbacks, when you have Brian Flores defense, the offensive line wasn't able to stay healthy, but it's still at a certain level. So it's going to be a coveted spot, which is why you have the Derek Carr throwing out purple and gold on a podcast or what have you. So let's say for a second, we'll put Kyler aside. You laid it out well. And I'm Mark Wilf, and I'm saying, you know what, Kyler, we're not going to do that. We're just not going to do that. We're going to either trade a second-round pick for Mac Jones, or we're going to sign Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, or Derek Carr. I'm sitting across from you, I'm Mark Wilf. Like, what is your response? You're being fully truthful and upfront with that route. how do you feel about? And I know I laid out two different routes, but how do you feel about those as the other possibilities per se?
I don't have a whole lot of interest in trading a decent amount of draft capital for Mac Jones. I think that it is possible that Mac Jones could make the playoffs with this team, but to me, you have to consider the ceiling. And that's why another option that I've been intrigued by is the idea of Malik Willis, if he were willing to come to Minnesota, because I think Malik Willis has the tools and has the athleticism to have a higher ceiling. With Mac Jones, to me, he is a classic, like, fringe starting quarterback, a Kyle Orton type quarterback, where if you have to start him, okay, well, you could probably make the playoffs with him, but it would take an act of God to win multiple playoff games with a quarterback that's lacking in physical skills like that. You would have to have not just a great defense, you'd have to have an iconic defense in order for someone like that to succeed, because eventually, and not a good offensive line, which I think they'll have next year, but a amazing top two at worst offensive line. Like, if you're going to win with a guy like that, that reminds me of Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco, where you look at everything that they gave. It was an elite defense. It was an unbelievable running game where he has to throw 7 passes or whatever in a championship game. Like, unless you think you can do that for Mac Jones, I would not give away draft capital for that. When it comes to Kirk, I think if you could superimpose Kirk Cousins 2023 on the day that he starts against the Green Bay Packers before his Achilles goes out.
He looked so good at that point.
He was locked into the offense, I think, unlike any other time we had seen him in Minnesota, and he was just firing on all cylinders. If you could take that person and just fast forward and his Achilles is fine, then I would say, oh, well, obviously bring back Kirk. But it's not. I mean, you see him, he could still throw the football for sure, but he can't move in the pocket the way that he used to. And because that, you're driving off of your legs and you're digging into the ground to throw the football, I don't see the same velocity that used to be there, and 20% of his passes were behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, he had Bijan Robinson. You look at some of the passing numbers, you go, oh, that's not too bad. Okay, well, Bijan had like that 70-yard run there after the catch, and, there was a lot of that. It's not that I don't think you could make the playoffs with Kirk, but I think it's a similar problem where it would take something miraculous to get 17 serviceable games and beat one of the teams in the NFC. Like, the other team is going to have Caleb Williams or Matthew Stafford or Jalen Hurts will be back, or Dak Prescott or something. Like, that's going to be hard to do. So the option that is most interesting to me there would be Derek Carr, because if you look at the way Derek Carr played in New Orleans, a team that was very mid at best, he was very good, and especially with Clint Kubiak. And the funny thing about the team that wins the Super Bowl is that everything they did was genius and everything your team did was stupid, right?
Of course.
But when you look at how Clint Kubiak played with Sam Darnold, there's a ton of similarities. How often they're under center, how often they're running play action, the success with play action. The biggest difference is probably that they ran more, obviously. And also Clint Kubiak got that football out of his hands faster, and everything wasn't on his shoulders there in Seattle. But Derek Carr played a similar way under Clint Kubiak in New Orleans. A lot of the under center, a lot of the play action stuff, and he is an accurate passer. He does have some concern about an injury because he claimed to have retired because of a shoulder injury, so I would be worried about that. But I also think that his ability to avoid sacks by getting rid of the football could keep drives on track, allow them to play to their defense, and they're going to be run first next year, right? No, maybe not.
Yeah.
But I think I do think that Carr, they'll run more. I do think that Carr is the one, because it's always about ceiling to me, and it could be a 1-year type of commitment. And you see where JJ McCarthy is at throughout that season, because with someone like that, with like a 1-year, hey, just come in, see what you could do, stabilize our franchise, get back to the playoffs, kind of save everybody. All right, well, but that doesn't mean to me you have to give up with McCarthy. I think if Kirk comes in, I don't know, right? Like, you definitely can't have a competition there, because Kirk's only coming back. I would assume Kirk's only coming back if he's going to start. Otherwise, he could go work for CBS and make $10 million a year. So then what? Like, do you feel like that can be a 1-year solution and you go over to McCarthy, even if Kirk halfway through the year struggle? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts there that I can't quite get my mind around, but I could see Derek Carr exploding in this offense. I was looking at his past history. I mean, there's not a lot of greatness around Derek Carr throughout his career. And when he had Devontae Adams, 100 catches, 1,500 yards. So
I was pretty blown away. Like, I went back and looked at a lot of the Derek Carr stuff, the numbers, but also some of the tape. But, like, I think he threw for 4,000 in 2021 or something. I mean, the year he had was just astronomical. I think I went back and watched the film of this game. He played Brian Flores defense in Miami. And I mean, he was managing the Flores pressure stuff, and I think they might have won that game in overtime. But yeah, I mean, the injury would obviously be something you would have to be certain about. But he would fit. I mean, all three of the veterans there and Mac Jones, they fit. The reason I bring them up is they fit the prototype of a more veteran guy who could navigate the offense, who would be able to manage the tools at the line of scrimmage, who is professional enough just to be able to handle everything at play. So I think it's interesting to hear you talk about ceiling, because that's the way you obviously view it. And I guess the question would be are the Vikings going to be after the highest ceiling possible or the highest floor possible with what they do here? And how will that dictate the decisions that are made? I guess in many ways you could argue that some of the guys have the highest floor and the highest ceiling. But, it's fascinating to line all of these all of these guys up and try to discern what the best fit is, frankly.
Well, don't you think that the floor is a myth here? Because everyone's floor that they can acquire this offseason could be a disaster. I mean, if you just tell me which guy could not be a train wreck. Mac Jones had several horrendous seasons with the New England Patriots, and you can go through the circumstances and everything else, but that's in there. It's not like he elevated them. So if you have a few things go wrong, remember, they thought nothing was going to go wrong and it was all going to click into place around McCarthy. And then all of a sudden, Justin School's starting at left tackle. Adam Thielen, and what was left of him is the number 3 wide receiver. And Aaron Jones pulls his hamstring. Andrew Van Ginkel gets hurt. Ryan Kelly gets hurt. Blake Cashman gets hurt. Harrison Smith's not back. And all of a sudden you're going, that's not exactly what we thought was going to go down around JJ McCarthy. And so you could say, well, if Derek Carr comes here and his shoulder doesn't work right, you're in trouble. If Kirk comes here and his physical capabilities have declined so much that you can't even be an average offense, you're in trouble. If you sign Malik Willis and he's not actually anywhere near as good as those 100 passes in Green Bay, you're in trouble. I mean, who is it that doesn't have a nightmare scenario? I mean, Geno Smith, the guy could throw 30 interceptions for Kevin O'Connell's offense. I mean, look at him last year. He's literally one of the worst quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And you can talk around any of these things, but every single one of them has oh my gosh, this could be a total nightmare. Kyler is probably the guy that has the highest floor, because even for a very middling 2024 Cardinals team, they were 500, but 500's not enough. Just being okay is not enough for where this team is at and what that locker room also needs. We make it about KOC and his job status, but that locker room just watched their quarterback win the Super Bowl. It's pretty hard to say to them, all right, guys, we're just going to go back to what we were doing. I mean, you have to give them a legitimate starting quarterback that they think they can win with. But every single one of them, I mean, Kyler has had injuries. He gets injured. He goes out. You're back to JJ. Right. So every single one of them carries a lot of risk, which is why, to me, you should just go the one with the highest upside, because the risk exists for all of them. If you try to play not risky, it's sort of like not going for it on 4th down. Like, you never think of punting as risky, but punting is risky. You're giving the team the other team the ball. So it's kind of maybe our risk assessment in our brains is not as good as we think it is.
So I'm going to play Mark Will for one more second on the quarterback subject. So I'm hearing you talk about risk and upside. what about Anthony Richardson? Because if he were to reach his upside, it would be the highest of all of the guys we've just mentioned. So what would you say to that?
Certainly, Anthony Richardson's talent is outrageous. This is a little bit of the problem with the folks that want to stick with J.J. McCarthy is that they're like, well, this guy or that guy has taken big steps forward through his career, but usually it comes back to Josh Allen, and there's really no comparison. There is actually a comparison with Anthony Richardson and the freakish level of talent. What it depends on for me a little bit there would be, well, what has Anthony Richardson been up to? Because I know he had a bizarre injury last year. He did sit, which could be helpful, but it doesn't guarantee. There isn't some sort of magic. If the guy sits, then he's just incredible. After that, he has to actually have been developing, right? And are you going to see the thing with these other quarterbacks that we've talked about is they've actually played well sometime. Mac Jones made the playoffs with the Patriots in his first year. Kyler has been good in multiple seasons. Same with Derek Carr, same with Kirk Cousins, same with Aaron Rodgers. But they've all had their moments. With Anthony, there has not been any moments for him. And you talk about somebody who is injury prone. I think we could say at some point that he plays in a way that will run him into further injuries. So that is a different dice roll to me because, yeah, sure, there's a world where you hit the lottery, but I think that's about the chances right now. I mean, if you're a team that drafts him and you want to move on, that's, to me, this sounds a lot more like Trey Lance, where everyone loves the idea of Trey Lance, and then they get Trey Lance and go, oh, yeah, okay. So if you were to do it, let's say you were to trade a conditional 7th that could turn into a 5th if he starts, I don't know, 8 games or something. I mean, all right. Like, I don't have any problem with that. But if you were talking about, all right, JJ and Anthony Richardson battle it out, that's going to be a no for me, dog.
It's crazy because, I mean, I don't know if you have, but I went back a couple weeks ago and just watched some of his throws, I think from 2023 or 24. I mean, it's like 75-yard, just like javelin shots. It's some of the craziest. Some of the completions, some of the craziest. But I wanted to ask you there. I mean, I think that the conversation in general, I mean, you laid it out well. Hearing you and also just thinking about myself, obviously, like it is hard to appease everybody with any of these specific routes that you're going to go down. I also am glad that you said in time, like JJ McCarthy still had, because people are going to say you're dismissing JJ McCarthy. It's not that at all. It's just how much development can happen in such a short order. So, it will be interesting to see how they try to answer the problem. We'll go one more subject because we could literally be here all afternoon if we took all of them that I want to talk to you about, and it would be the cut candidates. Okay, so you're $40 million over the cap. Everybody's making a big deal out of that, but you and I both know there are a lot of levers that this team and Rob Brzezinski, who will be, manning this thing at least until May, that they will be the levers that they can pull. What would you, what is obvious to you in terms of guys we can move on from and save money when you're talking Ryan Kelly, Javon Hargrave, Aaron Jones, TJ Hawkinson, Brian O'Neill and his contract? You're not cutting Brian O'Neill, but what are you going to do there? Like that segment of players, what would you recommend that the Vikings do with those guys?
Well, one thing is no team has ever failed to be cap compliant, so they'll get there, folks. I promise. But there's one that's probably been a bigger debate than I would have thought, which is TJ Hawkinson, because TJ Hawkinson gets pointed out for his regression in his production last year. But then you look around the rest of the weapons and you go, well, who didn't have a regression there? Jordan Addison, his target share went down significantly and production. And Justin Jefferson was in ways that we've never seen before, where the last day of the season, they're having to force him the football to get him to 1,000 yards. So it's not like TJ Hawkinson was alone, and he was perfectly fine when Carson Wentz was the quarterback. So you need someone to find you as the tight end. Also, if you cut him versus restructuring, it's the same amount of cap savings or within, $1 million or $2 million. So why would you get rid of a guy who's been a Pro Bowler in the past, was forced into playing a little bit of right and left tackle for you last year with all the chipping that he had to do? And then, with the quarterback situation, I would not be even really thinking about that. You need all the weapons that you can possibly have around quarterback X, not fewer, and not create another hole that you have to fill when you already have that guy. So I wouldn't be discussing that. Maybe the most challenging one, I guess there's two that are a little bit tricky. One is Aaron Jones, because what you know about Aaron Jones is that he is one of the great people in football over the last decade. A guy that any team would benefit greatly from having him in the locker room and as part of their leadership core.
Just his presence.
And he's someone that you'd love to have. Absolutely. Someone that you'd love to have on your team. I think he was a huge part of why the team did not collapse under the weight of the tension last year when they were failing. At the same time, the injury there kind of does it for me. Like that hamstring injury early on, and then he's playing through other injuries. He was injured in 2024 and probably every year before that. 2023, even though he had that great second half of the season, he was banged up halfway through that. That's the life of a running back. And we all know that we'd love there to be some outlier and someone who's different. And I guess maybe that's Derrick Henry, but everybody else who's not 6'7" and 382 pounds and runs a 4.5 like Derrick Henry is probably human. And I think we've reached that point. Now, could they be interested in a restructure of a contract so it costs them a lot less? They save $10 million or whatever, bring him back, and then get another running back. I guess that's possible. I need burst in that backfield. I know that it's become borderline obsessive with Vikings fans and KOC running the football. But one thing that does not get brought up is, when has he had a good running back? He gets here, and Dalvin Cook, the first half of the season, has still got it. Second half of the season is totally toast and falls off the face of the earth. Basically never plays in the NFL again after that. And then they turn it over to Alexander Mattison, another guy who's just great for a locker room, but doesn't have a whole lot of burst and is much better in a duo. They draft a guy who does have burst, but they can't stand him in the backfield, and they never use him in Ty Chandler. Then they go to Aaron Jones, who the first half of 2024 is very good, is averaging 5 yards a carry. Darisaw gets hurt. Cam Robinson's the worst running blocking tackle I can remember, and that falls off the face of the earth. But still, Aaron Jones did not have the explosiveness that was once there for him. And then last year, Mason is a good player, but it's not a guy who runs a 4.28 or something. Like, he's a freight train. He's a Leroy Horde. He's a plower more than he is somebody that's going to rip off 40-yard runs. So I think that they would run more if they had someone with that type of explosiveness, which to me screams the draft, but also could be free agency as well. I just don't think you can go back to this guys who don't make you right and guys who turn. I think Jones and Mason are guys who turn 40-yard runs into 20-yard runs. I think you need someone who turns 20-yard runs into 40-yard runs.
Your point is interesting because it's like Kubiak ran the ball more. Well, yeah, he had one of the most explosive running backs in the NFL in Kenneth Walker. The offensive line plays a role in confidence and conviction to run the ball as well. So it's you're right to bring that stuff up. And it will be interesting. Aaron Jones' cap number, to your point, I think it's like $14 million for 2026. And that's third most among all running backs behind Alvin Kamara and Jonathan Taylor. So it's not sensible for him to play on that number. The question would obviously become, if you're moving on from him, who do you target? Is it an ETN? Is it a Javonte Williams? Is it a Breece Hall? Can he do all the all-around stuff that you kind of need because Jordan Mason isn't the best pass protector and you don't have CJ Ham anymore? Are you drafting somebody? Well, the draft at running back besides Jeremiah Love is kind of like a shrug. So that one is that spot, and Hawkinson. But the running back one, to me, is incredibly interesting. And over the course of the last, 5 years, there's been all the talk about how devalued it is, and they're having meetings to talk about their value. Like, the position, in my opinion, is still incredibly important. And for this offense in particular, which it would only further bring more guys into the box and open more space in the back end for guys like Justin Jefferson, like, it is huge. It is important. And I mean, I can't wait to see how they try to fill that, what the answer will be, because the options are, I guess, plentiful in free agency, but intriguing is what I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that some people think it might be possible for Jeremiah Love to drop down the board. I would be very, very surprised at that, because it's a draft where you just don't have mind-blowing talent at the top. So more teams would be willing to take a running back. And if Kansas City doesn't do it, then who will with him? If you're not getting him, then you can probably wait until the third round. But then if you're taking a third round running back, can that guy come in right away and do what you mentioned? I like Travis Etienne for this. He was a very effective pass blocker, which is going to be important. But I mean, that's great. That's great to have a great pass blocking running back. But and look, we've seen teams struggle against Flores defense if they don't have that. So I'm not saying that it's not important, but I also think that when you watch Kenneth Walker, how many times does Sam Darnold do absolutely nothing? Hand him the ball and you get 7 yards. Hand him the ball, you get 12 yards. And it does wear teams down, but it also protects the quarterback, because that's fewer times that he has to drop back and take those hits. I mean, think about this. This is a crazy stat for you. Sam Darnold this year with the Seahawks got sacked in the regular season as many times as J.J. McCarthy did. That is
crazy,
mind-blowing. Now, I know a lot of that is on the quarterback and holding on to the football, but this offense has allowed quarterbacks to be sacked in the top 5 most since 2022. And I think a lot of that is that teams just don't have to respect the run at all. They can do whatever they want on first down. You need someone who's going to make them at least respect it. You could still run play action without it and succeed. We saw that from Darnold in 2024. But I think you need that. This is an easy button for our quarterback where he doesn't have to do anything. There's no stress. And then you get, explosive plays out of it. Who's going to be that guy? I don't know. But that needs to be, to me, at very, very high. And I think you can see from some of the coaching decisions who they moved up to offensive line coach, who they've brought in for some of the assistants. Oh, they have like a background in the run game. I think it's clear O'Connell is thinking about it. But just like at quarterback, you can coach it up all the ways you want to. But if that guy doesn't hit a hole and blow past somebody and break a tackle and then get into the open and outrun people, it doesn't really matter what you do schematically.
Yeah, and I definitely do think to the staff additions, Frank Smith, assistant head coach, Derek Warheim, the assistant O-line coach, comes from college, has a bevy of run experience. Like, I do think, and then you think about potentially a healthy offensive line, a running back, like, you could get to a place where you see a pretty sizable leap in that phase in general. You just got to actually go out and do it and produce it. So it's one area that I'm sure it'll come up next week. I'm going to be interested to hear what is said on that, what the possibilities might be. But I would continue with this. I mean, I'd ask you about the draft. I'll have to bring you back on before the draft and have you tell Mark Wilf who to draft in the draft room. So we'll do it that way. But this was fun. I will say, I mean, it has been interesting to see some of the reaction to when you toss in any of the quarterback names, the level of frustration, angst, vitriol over them. And I guess it's just par for the course of being where, this current free agent cycle is, the current draft cycle is, when you're coming off a season like they're coming off of. So, yeah, it'll be kind of fascinating to see how they try to thread that needle. That's for sure.
Well, I think that Vikings fans in particular are not excited about this because they've just seen it so many times. I mean, if you go back to like Christian Ponder, and then it's all right, well, who's the next quarterback after that, right? Or then, or Tavares Jackson before that, and then Teddy, and he gets hurt. You're bringing in Sam Bradford. You're always hoping to take somebody else's broken quarterback and mend them. And here we are talking about all broken quarterbacks who are going to be available and trying to mend them again. But the ironic thing about it is that it's worked. It's worked a bunch of times for this franchise, just not in the long term, but in the short term. I agree. They are in a very interesting position in many areas. And I am very intrigued to find out when I'm there in Indianapolis with you what they have to say about it. So thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. We will do it soon. For those watching and listening, I will have teased Purple Insider at the top, but I tell you this all the time. You work your ass off. It's not lost on me. There's a lot of podcast and writing that takes a lot of energy, and I don't know where you find it because you don't drink water or coffee, so it doesn't really make any sense. But the Diet Dr. Pepper, that'll do it. Thanks, Coller. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, dude.
And that'll do it for episode 148 of the Alec Lewis Show. Appreciate you guys being here and listening. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Again, as I said at the top, let me know in the comments what you think about some of those opinions. I'll be curious just as I file it away going into next week. Again, as I said earlier in the week, I will be in Indianapolis beginning on Sunday night at the Combine. Be there all week. We'll do shows from there. Conversations with everybody in the industry that'll hopefully inform our coverage, and I'm looking forward to it immensely. Looking forward to seeing a bunch of colleagues, and yeah, can't wait for it. Show is presented by First Resource Bank. It is sponsored by Unreal. It is available on YouTube where you can hit the subscribe button, and on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart, and we appreciate you guys listening. Have a great weekend, and we will see you guys next week. That'll do it for this episode of the Alec Lewis Show.